Okay, so we are going to start with the types of analysis that are related when you have one variable or when you have all of your variables, but you want to analyze them individually. So we have what we call one variable analysis. And here in this table, we have 4 groups of what type of analysis we can do in the when we have one variable. So we have the frequency distribution that we are going to talk in this video, and it is a very useful tool that we can use to show the frequency, how many times something happened. And there are different ways to show this in a table or in a graph. We're going to talk about that later. Then we have measures of central tendency that maybe you know about them, the mean, the median, and the mode, but we will talk about it later. Then we also have the measures of dispersion, like how wide your data is. Is it very close to the mean or is it far away? Then we also have measures of normality, and this is also very important because it will tell you how normal your distribution is, your sample is. So this will help you to be able to assume that your sample can be analyzed in a certain way. We're going to talk about that when we do the inferential statistics, but so far it's important that we know it from descriptive. Okay, so frequency, measures of central tendency, measures of dispersion, and normality. That's what we're going to do at the beginning. So let's start with frequency of distribution. And frequency of distribution is very important. It's a very important statistic that we're going to use because we want to show the reader how many times does something happen in our sample. So for example, in here, or let me start with the most basic way to show frequency. In this case, we have a sample of 790 companies, and we want to highlight that 80% of them had a turnover of less than 1 million. So we are basically saying that the frequency in our sample that companies had less than 1 turnover is 80% or 633 cases. So that's what frequency says. It's how many times something happened in your sample. So this is the easiest way to do it. You just put it in the text, highlighting the important thing that you want to show. But you can also do it in a table like this one. So what you are doing in here is, of course, showing like this. This is exactly the same thing, right? Like 633, 80%. So you are showing in a table that this first group of companies with less than 1 million in turnover represents 80%. And then you also have the next group where you have in between 1 million and 2 million, 2 and 3, blah, blah, blah. So you have more data in a table, so you can represent it as simple as this or as here. And as you can see, something very important is that you have groups or intervals, right? Like you are showing that 80% of the companies have less than 1 million, but why 1 million, right? Like maybe you're asking yourself, why 1 million? And why don't I group everything until 2 millions and then I show that it's 87%? Well, you can do it however you want. You just have to justify it well. And the best way to justify an interval or a group creation is if you base your intervals in a previous research. So that's a trick that I'm showing you, because then you are kind of avoiding further questions. If you reference to a study that also used these intervals, then it shouldn't be a problem to convince the reader that these intervals are fine. And this is very important when you are talking about these variables that I have in here. If you want to capture these variables and you want to do intervals from them, for example, income. When you ask a person for their income, it is difficult that they will tell you the number because maybe they don't even know it. Maybe it's variable or I don't know. But it is easier if you ask them if they can situate their income in a range, right? Like you tell them, you give them the survey, or you ask like, what is your income according to these groups? Group 1, less than 10,000 crowns. Group 2, between 10 and 20, something like that. And And to justify why these groups, then go to the literature, find a paper or a study that has already used these different groups and just reference it in your own paper. So that is the best idea to justify the groups. And using groups or intervals is super useful, not only for analysis like in here, but in also when you collect the data. So income is a great example because you don't want to ask, how much money do you earn per month? That's a very difficult question. It's better if you ask, from these groups, where would you situate your income? And then you already have the groups. Age is the same thing, like age can be sensitive topic. So it's easier if you ask like between 18 and 25, 26 and 32, something like that. Like, and again, reference a previous paper. And finally, we already talked about the easiest way to show the frequency distribution, then another easy way to use frequency distribution. But let's move on to the last one. Graphical way to show frequency distribution. And here is a table that you can use as a guide to how to show graphically, depending on the type of variable that you have. So ideally, nominal variables will be showed in a bar or in a pie chart. Then ordinal variables, the ranking variables, should be showed in a bar chart usually. Then histogram will be used mainly with scale variables such as interval or ratio. But this is kind of like a suggestion and kind of a framework that works overall, but in the end you should reflect on your own variable. How does it look better? How can I show it in a powerful way? And you can use this as a guide, but it is always better if you reflect on how you can show it. So let's continue with the same example, and I will show you some graphs of the same thing that we have been analyzing, right? Like this is text, this is table, and then this is a bar chart. Okay, so a bar chart when I also have my groups under 1 million, then between 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, 4 and 5. And in the x-axis, I have the groups, and in the y-axis, I have the percentages. So it's the same as this, the percentage. And they're in here. I can even, you know, like you have a lot of formatting options. That's also something that I will say this like 10 million times in this lecture, but we will learn this in the quantitative lab. You can maybe put in here the number, or maybe you can use different colors, something like that. But that is basically a pie chart, a bar chart. When you have bars that represent each group, and then you have the percentage in here. Then we move to the pie chart. It's a pie chart because it looks like a pie, okay? It's very dumb thing, but it's a circle, and then you have like pie slices. And the biggest slice represents the biggest group or the largest group, the first one, under 1 million. Here is the same as this, it's the same as this. Just different way to show it. And then we have different groups. Again, you will also learn, maybe you can write in here 80% or something like that. And then we move to the other graph, the histogram. The histogram, it is a very powerful tool because it will help you to find normality. We're going to talk about that later, but the histogram is a bit similar to the bar chart, but the histogram, instead of giving you the percentages, it gives you the frequency, how many times this around here, and that's another thing, like the software helps you to build this table. So you don't have to do the groups individually, as in the bar chart. In the bar chart, you have to do them manually, sorry. But in here, this is done by the software. And it doesn't say in here, but it should be somewhere around this, that between 0 and somewhere around this, like maybe 10,000, 20,000, there are almost 400 observations. And then it moved to this, it moved to this. And there you can see there is also nothing in here, a little bit, very few companies that are making a lot of money. So these are 3 ways to do it. And again, we're going to practice a lot. And the best way, I think, is with experience, you will learn how to find the best way to show it, but you get experience with practice. So I suggest that you try different graphs, try different things, and then you will see what's better, what's best for you. And it's also very subjective. Like, for example, from all of what we have learned, you have three options. You can show it like this. You can show it like this. You can do this, this, or this. So which one do you think is better for you? I don't know. I don't even know. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on your style. It depends on what do you want to highlight. I don't know. So it really depends. It's very subjective, but it's good that you know all the ways to show frequency distribution. So in the end, kind of a conclusion about frequency distribution is that it's a very powerful tool. So, but at the same time, try to not saturate the reader with tons of data tables and graphs. So maybe that's kind of my style. I would prefer this because it's the simplest way, and I want to show that 80% of the companies fall into the smallest group. Probably I will just show this, but maybe you are okay with this. So try to not overwhelm the reader with that. And in the end, again, use this on your benefit, use this strategically. But you have, that's the other takeaway point. You have to show this, you have to show somehow a little bit about frequency distribution of your variable, or some of your variables at least, because it gives, it shows a lot about your data. So don't ignore it, but also don't overwork it. So I think it's quite easy. The frequency distribution is not the most difficult thing in the world. So let's move to other descriptive statistics.